So hello, good morning. Welcome to this side event at the COP Health Pavilion. My name is... Can I start? Excellent, thank you so much. I was about to tell my name. My name is Tineke Oenema and I am the Executive Secretary of UN Nutrition. I hope you can hear me very well. We also have our guests online who hopefully can also hear me very well. Maybe just 2 words about UN Nutrition. UN Nutrition is a coordination mechanism in the UN system, and we work towards policy coherence in and across the UN system, and not just the policy coherence, but also the consistent and coordinated actions at country level. So that's UN Nutrition. We are organizing this event together, as you can see on the screen, with our members, World Health Organization, World Food Programme, and then also the Swiss government, and with support of the Sustainable Food System Program. We will have speakers from these people as well. So today we are here at the COP because we, as UN Nutrition and our members, we really want to put nutrition central to the climate negotiations. And why? Why? Because we see those crucial links between nutrition, healthy diets, food systems, and climate change. They impact each other, and that's what we need to see, and that's what we need to bring to the negotiators and to the negotiations. So that's why we are here, and we have a very good keynote speaker, Dr. Jessica Fanzo from Bloomberg University in the US, who will speak to us online. And then she will be followed by a distinguished panel with change makers from all across the world. Guyana, Costa Rica, Switzerland, and Fiji. I just want to share just one personal note with you as well. I'm very pleased to be here and see that there's a lot of movement around healthy diets and nutrition in this COP. And that's new. It was there so marginally, and now we are really making that push. So I hope this event is also helping us to make that push towards putting nutrition central to the climate negotiations. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jessica Fanzo to deliver her keynote address about healthy diets, dietary trends, and climate change. Jess, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Tineke, and to UN Nutrition for having me as part of this really important event. It's so great to have nutrition and diets as part of the COP meeting. I'm going to share my screen, and please let me know if there's issues with that. Good, so again, my name is Jess Fanzo. I'm at Johns Hopkins University. And I'm going to talk about eating in the Anthropocene. Can we mitigate climate change through food systems? So I think many of you know that food systems are both victims and instigators of climate change. We are in the middle of catastrophic climate breakdown when we look across greenhouse gas emissions, all Earth systems, be it deforestation, biodiversity collapse, ocean acidification. All of these indicators, as you can see from this graph, are going in the wrong direction. And much of that has to do with human behavior and the influence of humans on all of these Earth system processes. And we see that population pressure, our fertilizer consumption, our water use, transportation, telecommunications, everything that we are doing is significantly influencing the climate and the Earth as we know it. Climate change is projected to have a significant impact on crop yields. This is showing you in a 3-degree warmer world. Let's hope we never get to that. We see in many parts of the world, shown in red, declines in crop yields. But we also see declines in the nutritional quality of crops. Models suggest in a CO2 fertilization type atmosphere where we've got a lot of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we'll see declines in nutrients like protein, iron, and zinc, with many parts of sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia significantly affected across a variety of crops. And of course, these are populations that already are struggling to meet their nutritional needs. At the same time, food systems are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, not only in the way we produce food, but land use change, and of course, the entire value chain and supply chains that are emitting emissions. It's not only livestock, it's emissions coming from fertilizer application, from rice, from manure and pasture management. It's a whole range of issues in which food systems are generating approximately 30% of total greenhouse gas emissions. There's also detriments of food systems on certain environmental indicators like fresh water resources, biodiversity loss, collapsing of fish stocks. So we're seeing significant impacts of the food system, not only on greenhouse gas emissions, but these finite natural resources that are so critical to grow food. And so what does this mean for food security, diets, and nutrition? When we look at different climate change scenarios, and if you could just focus on the red as a business as usual scenario, some models suggest that we would see an increased number of people who are hungry, as well as less calories in the food supply in a business as usual effect, which makes sense with the data I just showed you. So climate change is and will continue to be a threat to food security and ensuring that people get enough calories in their diet. We'll also be dealing with more significant malnutrition burdens. We already are grappling with huge burdens of malnutrition, be it undernutrition with 811 million people undernourished, about 20% of the world's children under the age of 5 being chronically undernourished or stunted, and a significant growing burden of overweight and obesity, with many countries in this map shown in the darker color red, double, triple burdens of malnutrition. So we're not making progress on malnutrition, not much. Obesity is growing, and many countries are grappling now with multiple burdens of malnutrition at the same time, many being low and middle income countries. One outcome of the food systems, of course, is healthy diets, as Stineke had mentioned, but our diets are contributing significantly to disease and death. So what is meant to nourish us is creating significant disease and mortality in many populations, with dietary risks being one of the top risk factors of disease and death. And this are diets high in sodium, sugar, unhealthy fats, and low in fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds. So this pattern of unhealthy diets is going in the wrong direction. And we know that in addition to not only the unhealthy, unsustainable diets that we're seeing growing around the world, we're seeing significant inequities with 3 billion people who cannot afford what is considered a healthy diet, one that meets nutrient needs and is protective of health. And again, you see many parts of the global South being significantly impacted with deepening inequities around the world. And to make changes, we know that some countries need to do more. Look at the United States' consumption of animal source foods compared to places like Cambodia, Senegal, and Ethiopia. So some countries need to make bigger changes to their diets, not only to promote their own health, but to also protect the planet for everyone. So the inequities are significant, and some need to make bigger changes than others. So how do we begin to transform our food systems? And I only have 12 minutes, and this could be a whole semester of teaching at Johns Hopkins. But one large message is that we need to take a business unusual approach if we want to achieve the Paris climate targets. We need to increase yields of foods. As I showed earlier, climate change will significantly threaten yields. We need to cut food waste in half. We need to grow healthier calories. We need to reorient the agriculture system to not just grow staples and sugar and oil, but to grow more healthy foods. Better sustainable farm practices, got a lot of technology to do that now in hand. And we need to consume more plant-rich diets. We need to do all of this if we want to stay below 1.5. If we only address the energy and transportation sectors, we will not achieve the Paris target agreement. We have to fix food systems, and we have to do multiple things across the food system. We need to harness the political momentum that we have, and we need to make these moments meaningful. We're in COP. We just had the UN Food Systems Summit. We're in the middle of the Sustainable Development Goals, but quickly losing time. We've got 9 years left. We got the Convention of Biological Diversity, the UN Decade of Action on Nutrition, the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, the Decade of Family Farming. We have all of these important political moments, but we need to capture those and ensure that we do live up to the promises that we've made. We need to use evidence and data to help policymakers make informed decisions. Here at Hopkins, with partners like the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition and FAO, we've developed two big initiatives. One's the Food Systems Dashboard, which pulls together a lot of different data across food systems in very visually appealing ways to help decision makers understand what is happening in their food systems and how they're performing. We've also initiated something called the Food Systems Countdown Initiative that will assess and monitor the performance of food system transformation over the next 9 years towards the SDG goals. So look out for those, and we hope that these inform decision-making. The fourth thing we need to do is consider people. People are eating every day. They're moving in and out of the food system, making decisions. Much of the foods that are available for the world are these ultra-processed foods that are quite detrimental for health. This is what's killing the world. These foods are cheap, they're tasty, and they're convenient. And you see a significant growth in these ultra-processed foods and beverages around the world. And how do we shift, though? If healthy diets are unaffordable, what can we do to ensure that people can get access to healthy foods? Will everyone be growing lab-grown meat? Will everyone want to eat insects? What is ethically permissible, acceptable, and affordable for the world to consume a healthy diet? That is the big question that we need to grapple with and understand. What do people want and what can they afford in these critical times of significant economic downturn? We also need to learn from COVID. Boy, does COVID have some lessons for us across the food system. We know that shocks to other systems, like the health system with COVID, had significant impacts on every other system: education, food, the economic system. These systems interact, and we need to understand those interactions and try to ensure that we stave off shocks and make these systems more resilient. Other things like protecting and supporting food system workers, ensuring they're vaccinated, ensuring they have masks, ensuring that the facilities where they work are protective for their own health. They're undervalued, and we need to value the workers that are working to deliver and produce our food every day. We need to also think about a One Health approach, bringing in social protection programs for those who can't afford diets, stabilizing trade, ensuring that trade remains open and flowing. These were all big lessons to learn from COVID, and it's an opportunity to now work together at national and supranational levels and really build a more resilient food system. The other issue is dealing with elephants in the room. In the food system world, we have many challenges around politics, around power imbalances, around considering the right to food. Many of these played out in the UN Food Systems Summit. If we really want to address food systems, improve diets and nutrition, we need to deal with some of these vexing underlying political problems that the food system faces. If we ignore it, we'll forever be caught in a loop where we can't really make significant progress, particularly for those who have no voice, who are purposefully disadvantaged and marginalized. We really need to start tackling these issues head on and creating a better governing system to do this. And I'll end there. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jess. And thank you for getting up early for us. And thank you for your wake-up call. I mean, you were so powerful in just stating the urgency of the climate crisis and at the same time, the urgency of the malnutrition crisis, all forms of malnutrition and how they are interlinked and what we need to do. And we know what to do. And the political momentum is there. You mentioned it very clearly. So yeah, let's do something. So let's go to our panel. Maybe you can join me. We will have, as I mentioned in my introduction words, a few people who are online speaking with us and then also with me here in the room. And I'm so happy that we had Jess Fanso introducing the topic and that we can now go to listen to the practical examples of actual change makers of countries who are already doing it. So let's go to you. Ms. Carla Mena Soto from Costa Rica, from the Agriculture Extension and Climate Negotiations team. Tell me something about Costa Rica. How is Costa Rica promoting sustainable healthy diets to improve nutrition and climate change, helping to conserve its beautiful environment? The floor is yours. Sure.
Maybe can I?
Yes, please.
Good morning. First of all, thank you very much for that invitation and to have this great opportunity to share the first steps that we are doing on it. Thank you very much for the keynote speaker presentation. Was great. It's really that tremendous challenge that we have. Like Costa Rica and a Ministry of Agriculture and negotiation in agriculture, I would like to tell you that agricultural sector in Costa Rica during many years are working together in the line of sustainable food system. We are in the line on it because we consider the challenge and the opportunities that we have, not only in climate change, that's to have just GHG emissions or GHG inventory. We believe in the environmental, social, and environment and economic impacts if we want to develop our sustainable food system, because it's so important to take care of the natural resources. The food comes from the natural resources, from the soil, from the earth, from the water, you know? I don't know, you remember when I was in my school, my teacher said that water is forever, soil is forever, and now no. You know, this is really, really important to take because it's the baseline to food to produce. So in my country, in the public sector, we are making a really nice engagement with other ministries: agricultural, health, commerce, cultural, and education ministries, that we are working together to have our sustainable food system, but like guidelines. We in the last year with COVID-19 started, we start to communicate our first food-based dietary guidelines. That guidelines, especially for when we are going to organize our different type of people, especially kids, of course, young people, and the women are in lactating period. First of all, we are working on it with kids, and in order to teach them where comes the food and how they can replace salty food or fat food, fresh and vegetable fruits, because you know we are a tropical country. We have many fruits and many vegetables. So how to teach them? You know, it's not from the supermarket, come from the land, come from the farm. So we start like that with that guideline. So for us, it's very important to have these food dietary guidelines like an instrument to start to contribute to guarantee to the population to obtain healthy and sustainable diet to start. So something really important to say also from the agriculture minister, we are working also to have mitigation and adaptation actions in 5 of our many our most important activities in the agriculture. Rice, we eat a lot of rice. Sugarcane, bananas, we love bananas, and I think the whole world loves bananas too. Livestock and coffee, you know, we love coffee too. For us, this is a very important crops in our economic and social development. And why not in food production? Why not in agriculture? So we start our NAMAs. NAMAs, I don't know if you know about it, but NAMAs are mitigation actions in order to count the GHG emissions. But our approach is in integrated system, soil, water, sustainable way to plant, to crop, to have our land in a sustainable action with the producers, because we need to work with the producers in order to, for example, reduce fertilizers or apply good practices. That is so important for us in order to be engaged with to produce food in the sustainable way. That is a big example that I want to share with you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so lively. And yes, I do like bananas, by the way, like everyone else, as you said. But I really liked how you put things in a multi-sectoral perspective and how you mentioned that the food system and how you work across the food system for better nutrition. But I even more liked it, how you connected back to people, to consumers, to people who need to be informed also what is appropriate, what is cultural acceptable through food-based dietary guidelines. That's such a powerful tool, especially when you link it with sustainability criteria that really informs you what's healthy and good for the planet at the same time. So really, really good and interesting points you made. And also linking back so nicely with what Jeff Fansa just mentioned online. So great, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to hear from our next speaker, who will be joining us from Switzerland and is online with us, and Mr. Patrick Mink, who is the Senior Policy Officer of the Federal Office of Agriculture in Switzerland. Patrick, I hope you're online, and I hope you can give us a glimpse of Switzerland's food systems national pathway and how it is fundamental for climate change. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, Stineke. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stineke, dear excellencies and colleagues. Switzerland was one of the countries that, in preparation of the recent UN Food Systems Summit, submitted a national pathway for food systems transformation in support of the 2030 agenda. This pathway or roadmap aims to address the entire food value chain and beyond, from production to consumption, through a holistic approach. It contains an action plan and 4 measurable goals to be reached in 2030, directly linking nutrition, health, environment, agriculture, and climate. These are: 1, increase to 1/3 the proportion of the Swiss population consuming a healthy and sustainable diet in line with our nutrition recommendations. 2, halve avoidable food losses. 3, decrease the carbon footprint from consumption by 1/4 compared to 2020. And 4, increase the proportion of farms engaged in especially environment and animal-friendly production by 1/3. With about 7.3 million tons of CO2 equivalent, agriculture currently accounts for about 16% of total greenhouse gases generated in Switzerland. However, the figure for food consumed in Switzerland more than doubles to almost 15 million tons of CO2 equivalent, in particular due to food imports. So we have to take into account the entire system and also imports, and not only what's produced. If Switzerland's entire population were to follow the nutrition recommendations of our food pyramid, our greenhouse gas footprint could be more than halved while promoting people's health. And if food waste at consumption stage could be reduced to zero, a total reduction of 2/3 could be possible. This is why the draft food and agriculture climate strategy that is currently being developed as one of the measures supporting our national pathway for food systems transformation aims for long-term targets by 2050, namely reducing the carbon footprint from food by 2/3 compared to 2020, while reducing emissions from agriculture by 40% compared to 1990. To sum up, Stineke, sustainable food systems should be promoted as an essential solution to climate change, and promoting healthier and more sustainable diets can make a major contribution towards net zero carbon. Switzerland is therefore committed to embed nutrition and food systems in the UNFCCC negotiations. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Again, a beautiful example of Switzerland and how you again place food systems for, and the outcome of food systems, good nutrition central, stating that if people would follow the Swiss population, but also other people would follow the recommendations for a healthy diet, greenhouse gas emissions would drop dramatically. And in addition, lives would be saved. So yet another very powerful example. I'd like to go to our next speaker, who is also online and who is speaking to us from Guyana, Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, who is advisor to the Minister of Health in Guyana. And I'd like to know, Ministry of Health, but why has climate change become part of the Ministry of Health core work? Dr. Ramsamy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Why climate change is important to Guyana? One, because we can help globally, because we have a large rainforest and carbon credits. But two, in a report last week, 9 cities were reported as in danger that by 2030, between 2030 and 2050, they could be underwater. I am sitting and reporting and talking to you from one of those cities. We are a city and a country below sea level, and we are already impacted. In the last decade or so, we have suffered from massive floods, from droughts. We see climate change as something real. And so when we look at the 2 recent Lancet Commission's report that identify climate change as the biggest global health threat we have, we know, we experience it. We consider 4 governance issues, not just for our government, but for governments around the world, that must become part of the nationally determined contribution as part of the Paris Agreement. First, there must be aggressive cross-sector collaboration under a One Health agenda umbrella, which mandates health in all policies, regardless of which sector those policies emanate from. And in that respect, Guyana is about to launch its national One Health coordinating commission. Second, there is an absolute need for vertical coordination of this effort. And ministries of health must take ownership of that. In the early 1990s, the existential threat of HIV and AIDS, globally we established UNAIDS, nationally we established National AIDS Program. The time is now for a dedicated, committed program to address health adaptation because of climate change. And ministries of health must be in charge of that. As part of Guyana's low carbon development strategy, there has to be, we have a planning unit to address across sector the many adaptations for climate change. and Health is playing a leading role in that planning unit. And we recognize that research is not only from the developed countries and northern research flowing down to the south, but there must be a rich array of research, climate-related research in developing countries. And therefore, we must build that capacity through our university here. We're trying to build that capacity. Now, whilst I can go through all of the health issues that we face and what we are doing, I think there are two health issues that are worthy of special mention. First, I would strongly posit there is no health without good nutrition. And for this reason, we have we need nationally mandated dietary guidelines. Guyana has had these guidelines, but I believe globally we need to adopt these guidelines and to create more options, for example, for blue food, blue food options. Dr. Fonso has very eloquently gave us all the ways that the World Food System has failed us. So I don't want to go in. The world food system needs to be transformed, and we in Guyana are trying to address this issue. Dr. Fonso went into a number of things. I want to just highlight something. Guyana is trying to look at food wastage, spoiling of food, wasting of food. 30% of food around the world, and in Guyana also, are wasted. We have to have better systems to preserve our food. The intellectual property rights driven inequity affect the world food system. Better technology, better seeds, for example. We are trying to work with our Caribbean colleagues in front of the package labeling. Globally, you know, we have had a decade of Fonso. I hope one day you would address issues like those. At Codex Alimentarius, for example, we sometimes feel that they represent more corporate interests than citizens' rights. So we have domination in our supermarkets and so of highly processed food, salt, sugar, trans fat. In the meanwhile, 33% of our soil are today regarded around the world as degraded, and another 33% at risk. Same thing with fishing grounds. I think some 30% of fishing grounds are now overfished, and another 30% on the threat. The second noteworthy health outcome impacted by climate change that I would like to highlight, and in that respect, as we are speaking with Columbia University, the WHO, etc., we are addressing this issue in Guyana, and that is mental health. And while climate change can worsen mental illness and mental disorders, we have neglected that climate change has severe impacts on mental wellness, emotional resilience, and psychosocial well-being. We must stop the historical neglect of mental health. Guyana is trying to address this issue as we speak. So I think I will stop there for the moment. And those are the reasons why climate change is so critical in terms of our national policy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, and also again for, you know, allowing us an insight in the urgency of your particular country already suffering so much from climate change and serious floodings. And then again, I'd like to thank you as well for mentioning again this important tool of food-based dietary guidelines that can really make a difference for producers, consumers, and policymakers working across sectors in order to transform food systems towards more sustainable ones, and also to deliver more healthy diets. Very, very good examples. I'd like to check if there's any questions for now in the audience or online. Otherwise, I do have a follow-up question for some of the panelists. I'm just checking. You can wave your hand, or if online, I'm sure my team will get those questions to me. If not, then while people are thinking about their questions, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, but any other of the panelists online, please. Carla, could you please tell me how Costa Rica is placing nutrition at the heart of the UNFCCC negotiations? I mean, we have all heard about the importance of it, and it's kind of inside, outside the negotiations, but what to do to get it really inside?
This is a really great question. So maybe food-based dietary guidelines and Danama's action and this institutional coordination in a small country in the world like my country is the first steps. We believe to be in that negotiations because Coronivia believe or isn't in the way in that line. I would like to tell you with the evidence, because sometimes when we talk about agriculture, maybe you think we are not included, but we already included since when we start in Coronivia. Coronivia is the group with agriculture, we call like that. But for example, during the last days, we were discussing many topics, like I told you, crops like coffees or soils, livestock is so important because it's part of the diet of many countries. And so one of our main concern is how to address, just to produce in the sustainable way through the chain of value to the consumption. And in agriculture at Coronivia is so engaged, and we are so engaged with what that we recognize the importance to scaling up. It's not to do it, it's to scale, because we eat every day. We eat the food that you have in the supermarket. So, but we need to scale in order to know what exactly you are eating. What exactly is the importance of the healthy diet depend of the age you are. This is so important. So in our conclusions, I would like to read just really fast in order you can, and I can evidence the importance of scaling up support to enhance action on safeguarding food and nutrition security and ending hunger, aiming for inclusive, sustainable, and climate resilient agriculture systems, taking into consideration to the vulnerability of agriculture in the climate change. We recognize the need to improve food security, to mobilize resources to implement action at the local and international level. So we are engaged on it. So in Coronivia, we talk about agricultural authentic aspects, but we include, of course, food nutrition. At the end, this is a baseline. For that reason, Costa Rica is part of that group. We believe on it. And also, like Costa Rica, we are in the similar line in order to re-educate our consumers, our consumption market, in order to obtain maybe in the future incentives. That is so important, because it's not that rice, that banana, that milk from sustainable way to produce and another kind to produce. So we are in the way on it.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for promoting this important topic within Coronavia. But how do you think your actions are being regarded? What is the response from other countries in the room, if you can share that with us?
Yes, well, like we are more than 100 countries over there. And this kind of conclusion is not Costa Rica conclusions. We are agree with this, with all of these topics here in that paper. It's not just Costa Rica. This is Coronivia. And Coronivia is leading by G77 and China. Our chair is, this is ANSAFTA and SBI in the negotiations. We recognize this and they accepted. So we made that welcome to the report in order to enhance in our national level. So it's difficult because to implement many things that we discuss in the room, the most important thing that I told you in the last sentences is how to implement, because it's urgent. We need to implement. So yesterday I was in a side event about unlock the climate finance in order to work in food nutrition, in order to work in adaptation, because we need to change the way of work. So we are thinking on it. And the most important thing, we are going to implement, and is urgent to implement resources in the way of not only livestock, soil and water, also food nutrition and socioeconomic situation to our society.
Excellent, thank you. And I cannot agree with you more. It's not just the word, but you need action, and you are doing it already. I can see that Mr. Patrick Mink from Switzerland also would like to add to that. Well, I know Switzerland is also putting action to the words. Patrick, you have the floor with a question or an answer. Tell me.
Yes, thank you very much, Stineke, and thanks also to the colleague from Costa Rica. Actually, yeah, I just wanted to add, I think, to that, because Switzerland has also actively followed the Coronivia joint work on agriculture, where we clearly expressed the following 3 points. First, to address interrelated global challenges, including climate change, biodiversity loss, food security and nutrition, we need to look beyond agriculture and really adopt a holistic food systems approach. Second, in addition to the need to promote more sustainable production practices, there is a need to adopt healthier and more sustainable diets with low environmental impacts and low carbon footprints. And third, to address climate change through a systems approach that considers both production as well as the consumption side of food and nutrition. Cross-sectorial food systems policies need to be jointly developed and implemented with the effective involvement of all relevant stakeholders. And we are also championing these points in other global processes, in particular through Switzerland's role as co-lead of the UN One Planet Network's Sustainable Food Systems Program, and in fact, together with our colleagues from Costa Rica as well there. The recent UN Food Systems Summit too has highlighted these interlinkages between food, nutrition, health, and climate change, with participants urging a systems approach to food. And furthermore, Switzerland joined the summit's coalition on healthy diets from sustainable food systems, which brings together the health and climate communities, highlighting co-benefits of this approach. Now, we are therefore very pleased with the conclusions on the Coronivia joint work on agriculture agreed upon last Friday, in particular the inclusion of the notion of food systems on the initiative by Switzerland. Concretely, the document recognizes that socio-economic and food security dimensions are critical when dealing with climate change in agriculture and food systems. And it stresses the need to design sustainable and climate resilient agricultural systems, applying a systemic approach in line with long-term global climate objectives. So in line with this, we also hope that in the follow-up to the Coronivia joint work on agriculture, parties will further broaden the scope of the deliberations to a more holistic view on food systems, including the role of healthy nutrition and sustainable diets in tackling climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. That was a very, very good addition indeed. Go beyond agriculture, link sustainable production and healthy diets, and systemic approach to tackle climate change. What I particularly liked about that comment, about your intervention just now, is to link global processes. We are here at COP26, but that ends like this Friday or Saturday, and then we need to go on. We need to continue bringing this message everywhere, because there will be other opportunities. Of course, we now need to make the difference at this moment in this room, but then we need to continue and not stop. I'd just like to check with Dr. Ramsamy if he would also like to make an additional comment at this stage.
I just want to say that in Dr. Fonso's presentation, she highlighted the nutrition dashboard so we could make policymakers more aware of the dangers and the opportunities. But we must also remember the ordinary citizens that go into the markets, to the supermarkets, and so they need to also be aware. The fact of the matter is Guyana is a food secure country. We produce all the food that we need, but we import a lot of food. The Caribbean import between 5 and 10 billion US dollars worth of food, mostly hyper processed food, high in salt, sugar, and fats. We've been trying as a government to get front of the package labeling and always being confronted with corporate interests. And I mentioned it with Codex Alimentarius. It's been more than a decade, and some countries in Europe also have already started to do it. But we have, the compromise is always back at the package labeling, hide the information from the people, and the amount of money spent on advertising. So with all the things that we talk about, a lot of time consumers are driving the process. They're the ones buying, and we need to make them aware, not only that the nutrition they're taking to sustain themselves are actually making them sick and killing them. We need to make them aware that some of these food contribute to climate change that is now an existential threat in front of the package labeling. So we need to bring the citizens forward. At the Ministry of Health here, we are trying not only to sell better dietary guidelines, but also to make citizens aware of the danger that they spend money on.
Thank you for calling attention again to highly processed food, sometimes imported, that really are detrimental for health and for the climate and contribute to climate change. We cannot forget that. We cannot forget to work on the food environment also, to try to improve it, to allow people have access to healthier choices. And forget or diminish access and sometimes even preferences for less healthy options like highly processed foods that are high in sugar, salts, and not so high in fibers. I'm just looking around in the room here. Any questions so far? Yes, I see two. Okay. You fight among each other. Who is first? I'm the moderator, so.
Hi, I'm Margaret Jackson. I'm representing MedAct at COP26. And thank you for really, really interesting presentations. I'm really excited to hear about the sort of things that are going on in Costa Rica and Switzerland and Guyana. I'm a bit puzzled as to whether we can or should expect anything concrete coming out of the COP at the end of the week on this issue of tackling food. So are we likely to, and if not, should we, or is this something that really has to be tackled on a more local, national, or even regional level?
Thank you. I'll take the second question and then we do a very quick round among the panelists to try and answer. Sorry.
Mine's quite a specific question, so not holistic, but does take multiple things in account. Rice production. We know rice growing generates a lot of methane, but is a huge global nutritional asset. So that, and there's a lot of cultural beliefs around its production. So I wonder if Costa Rica has something to feed, because you mentioned rice as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'd like to take that immediately, Carla.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you can, you can also reply to that question before we go back to the
Thank you very much for that questions. Well, first of all, rice. Yes, rice is so important and it's part of our actions in mitigation, because we know we are studying, first of all, well, we start rice since many years ago, changing varieties, control the different ways to the way to plant the rice in summer and rain season. And we are working with the private sector, because sometimes the private sector has to control it to produce and of course to the market. And we start with them to have a public policy agreement with them in order to each year to see how the good practices they are implemented in the farms, because our big farms, rice farms are really big in my country, start to reduce or start to show how the demonstrate as is not only mitigate and is adaptation and is the varieties of the rice are nutritional aspects. But we are starting with this since 3 years ago, maybe, yeah, 2 years ago. But of course, before we are trying to try this link with this private sector. This is so important too. And according with your answer here in the COP, I think public policy is really important in order to agree the things that we want to change. Because if not, is how do we engage and address the change. Another really important is to include producers in our topics, any kind, policy or technical, when we need to include the producers.
Thank you. I know we are running out of time, but I'd like to give Patrick or Dr. Ramsamy just a 30 seconds opportunity each to try and reply the question, the first question. And Jess as well, I'm sorry. 30 seconds each.
I think that whilst I'm not sure that COP26 will have agreements around nutrition and health, I think that no COP so far has had so much focus on health and nutrition as this one. So that, in a way, is a step forward. I believe much of what has to be done is at local level. In terms of the question on rice, rice production it takes up a lot of land across the world. In Guyana, 80% of what we produce are exported, and it's one of our major crops. Well, we need better technology, better ways of applying fertilizer, for example, pesticide. Drone technology can make these more efficient and therefore reduce how much fertilizers, how much pesticide we use. So I just want to highlight the fact.
Thank you. I think you've taken your 30 seconds. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have one final speaker also. So I'd like to give Patrick 30 seconds, then followed by Jess 30 seconds. Really keep it one breath, and then we go for the final call for action. Patrick.
Okay, thanks. Just very briefly, and I agree with Dr. Ramsamy's points fully. And well, can we expect more from COP or by the end of the week? I'm not sure. I'm not one of the negotiators there, but to my knowledge, this is really the first time that the notion of food systems has been included in an official UNFCCC negotiation document. So this for us is already a great achievement and will allow to continue working on that linkage between health, nutrition, food, climate at a global scale and within the UNFCCC. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. Jess.
Yeah, agree. It's nice to see even these kind of side events, with food at the COP. This didn't exist a couple of years ago. But I think with that said, it's a bit disheartening overall to see the lack of commitment on climate. And we're running out of time, and food is a big part of that equation. So policymakers really need to start stepping up and taking it seriously. And there's no time to waste anymore, because climate change is barreling down on us. And that's the reality. So yeah, to me, it's policymakers are not doing enough on climate overall, and they're certainly not doing enough on food.
Yeah. No, I hear all of you, the four of you, and I hear the people in the room and around me in COP. It's true, it's urgent. Not enough is happening. So yes, let these negotiators take that climate change seriously, but also let we do also our job and take our responsibility in our own environment. Let's just do it together. But I'd like to go for the final call for action to Her Royal Highness Princess Sarah of Jordan, who is also the Special Advisor of World Food Programme on maternal and child nutrition. Princess Sarah, you have the floor. A final call for action.
Thank you very much indeed. For tackling climate, environmental, nutrition and health challenges, we shall all meet at the table. The title of this event has me feeling very Broadway. In the spectacular musical, Aaron Burr, Hamilton's nemesis of sorts, is excluded from nation-building discussions, deal-cutting and decision-making. His frustrated outburst comes in the form of a song called "In the Room Where It Happens," because that is where he has to be relevant and to participate. Is the table we're meeting at in the room where it happens? Who is sitting at our table? Is it diverse, inclusive, community-based, and burning with the urgency and determination of the youth movement, working in lockstep on a common agenda and speaking with the same voice? And if we've got all that right, do we have the leverage to play and cut deals with the big boys, international banking, the extractive industry, agriculture? And are we willing to play hardball with the governments who are, at the same time, our donors and executive board decision makers? Obviously, my questions are rhetorical and provocative, and as an advocate myself, I absolutely do not discount the necessity and power of strategic messaging and relationships. In fact, I would argue that we need more and better advocacy, both within our organizations and thematic sectors and beyond them. So while not neglecting the need to try to influence global negotiations and discussions, my call to action is actually a call to prioritize what is already in our ability to improve and impact. After all, for UN agencies and programs, NGOs and civil society, our table is well established. Baking in the desert, under a tree with a crowd of weary patient women, babies and children, in a damaged health facility, or as it was for me and my WFP colleagues 2 weeks ago in Bukavu, grappling with the paradox that is much of the DRC, a country so lush and fertile, yet home to the largest total number of people facing food insecurity. Yesterday was officially COP's Adaptation, Loss and Damage Day. And even in the very best case scenario, how long will it take before the impact of negotiations in Glasgow is felt by people at our table? By Rohingya refugees, for example, housed in permanent structures in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, Cyclone Alley of the Indian Ocean. By the communities around Lake Chad or in southern Iraq, who in the space of a generation have seen their evaporate. Or in Madagascar's Grand Sud, where decades of neglect exacerbated by the climate crisis, had the foreign minister in 2019 acknowledged that his government was sitting on a time bomb. We already have access to the most vulnerable communities, and they are trapped in a tangled web of ungoverned spaces driven by varying combinations of poverty and underdevelopment, food insecurity, environmental degradation, inequality, and persecution, further complicated by politics, history, and national self-interest of the narrowest kind. We know this. The problems are complex and the causes multifold and interlocking, but still we maintain a response architecture of division and competition and preserve the false dichotomy of development and humanitarian. The good news is we know the solution too. In every setting and in every sector, focus should be on and for the entirety of a woman and girl's body and needs. And the bedrock of her needs, my needs, is of course good nutrition. Women and girls with their full participation need proven and low-cost nutrition interventions such as breastfeeding, supplementation, and fortification, while there is simultaneous work and effort across all other sectors to improve healthcare systems, water and sanitation infrastructure, sustainable production of nutritious foods for a diverse diet, peace and stability, and gender equality. She is the front line of change, both as a first responder in crisis and because her resilience, security, and full potential, as determined by brain development and a strong immune system, are the bedrock of success for all our missions, and without which we negate the positive impact of all other interventions and support, and continue to condemn the most vulnerable to an intergenerational cycle of dependency, failure, and frustration. We must do more than pay lip service to a person-centered approach. If geography and security are issues, leaving only a small number of actors on the ground, they must be properly financed and empowered to provide a comprehensive package of support. Leaving no one behind means being in the hardest of places at the worst of times and providing a comprehensive package of goods and quality services, and then going beyond and making visible the invisible. In conclusion, I applaud the efforts and examples presented by colleagues from Costa Rica, Switzerland, and Guyana. I am shaken by Professor Fanzo's keynote presentation. And I implore those of us who work in positions and organizations of influence to do better together. Keep women and girls at the core. Prioritize populations and communities we know are the most vulnerable or have already been left far behind. And root response and engagement through the transversal nutrition platform as the bedrock to the success of all other ambitions, and a means to address many of the root causes of the issues on the COP table. Thank you.
Thank you, Princess Sarah. A powerful call to action. So let's do it. I really liked, just to summarize, your reality check, your statement that there is a difference in power, but then also your positive note that we know what we can do. We have the evidence, we have the knowledge. We know there is a food system, there is a win-win if we transform food systems for better nutrition and to tackle climate change. And we know that if we put nutrition at the center of food systems, it will work for better human rights and for more equity. So with having said this, I'd like to conclude this seminar, this webinar, and this side event. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their powerful contributions. And I'd like to thank the people in the room for their good questions and their patience, and the colleagues online for helping out with the technicalities. I wish you a very good rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.